I'm Justin Silverman of the New England First Amendment Coalition. Thank you all for joining this 30-minute skills course on data cleaning. This is going to be the first program of two that we'll be providing. The second will be on February 26th, so please make note of that date. If you haven't already, download OpenRefine, it's free software, as well as a sample data set that we provided when you registered for this webinar. I'll provide links to both in the chat box for this course. If you're watching this as a recorded presentation, all of the links you need and materials that are required will be in the video summary. During this presentation, if you have any questions, if you need help troubleshooting, please use the chat function and I'll be able to assist. With that said, we have a lot of material to cover in a very short period of time. So let me introduce today's instructor, Maggie Mulvihill. She's a longtime investigative journalist, a board member of NEFAC, and a journalism professor at Boston University. Maggie, all yours.
So we're going to run through very quickly how you clean data in a tool called OpenRefine. And there are other tools to clean data, but this is the one that's used by journalists most frequently, unless you know some programming. And it's a free open source tool. So our lesson today will be on defining dirty data. What is it? And then I'll get you started on cleaning with OpenRefine. We're just going to do 3 skills today. We're going to learn how to create a project, clean with facets, and cluster. So you first have to start with what is dirty data? What does that mean actually? And the data that we're going to work with today is actually real campaign finance data from a man who was running for district attorney in New York, Dan Donovan. And what dirty data is and why you have to clean it is because you can't do any kind of reliable analysis or visualization with data that has missing information, misspellings, punctuation problems, inconsistencies, wild aberrations. You might look at it and think that really doesn't make sense. So you have to clean it and standardize it to get it into shape so you can do a reliable analysis on it. And an example of this is a story I did with my students a couple of years ago, actually 10 years ago now. I was teaching them how to clean data, and so we decided to look at how much money politicians in Massachusetts were spending from their campaigns. And we saw a lot of interesting things. You know, they were buying tuxedos and getting tinted SUVs and makeup artists, cigars, lots and lots of flowers. And none of this is illegal, but it still was newsworthy. So we got the data set of all the spending, which was $77 million for the period we were looking at. And we started doing some sorts in Excel. And we saw in the flowers under the purpose column, you can see it here. We wanted to analyze how much politicians spent on flowers, just as one category. And you could see that flowers was listed in so many different ways, and you couldn't do a quick group by query in SQL or a pivot table in Excel to get a reliable figure or number that you could analyze or visualize. So we had to standardize it, and we did that in OpenRefine, and we ended up getting this story, this lead here, you know, hundreds of floral arrangements and lots of other things. So that's an example for journalism of how we clean data. When you get a data set, you always should interview it, or interrogate it, really is a better word, really interrogate it. You know, I tell my students, you have to be so familiar with your data set. It's like interviewing a source. What's in the data? How many records do you have? What's missing? And you always get a data dictionary or a record layout from the agency. I mean, I don't know how many are non-journalists on this meeting, but you know, for journalists, we get government data, which is notoriously messy, campaign finance data in particular. And we have to know what's in the columns and rows before we can start cleaning. So you really interrogate your data, look for aberrations, look for problems, always make a copy and keep really careful notes of what you're doing. And never be afraid to ask someone either who's worked with that data set, or more importantly, talk to the IT people at the agency that you got the data from to make sure that you understand it. Okay, so let's get started with OpenRefine. Again, it's an open source tool. You can use it online or offline. I've actually cleaned data in the car driving to Philadelphia for Thanksgiving one time. I remember with my husband and baby in the car because you can work with it offline. And OpenRefine is so useful for us because it can read so many different types of data. And because you can also use it to explore your data and do some analysis. We're actually going to do that today. Okay. So what we're going to do with OpenRefine today is two important skills, facets and clustering. And then we have an advanced session next month where you can learn some of the other skills. So go ahead and launch OpenRefine. Go ahead and launch the software. And when you do that, it will run as the command line, and then it will transform into this easy to use interface. So I'm going to do this live with you, and then we're going to go ahead and create a project. It's really easy to use. We're just going to pull our file in. So what I want you to do is open up that spreadsheet called Dirty Campaign Finance Data, and just take a quick look at it. You should have 2,045 rows, including a header row that identifies the columns. So you want to, again, make sure you know what's in your data before you start cleaning and you have a copy so we don't have to duplicate columns when we're cleaning. So if you've got it open, let's go, and you know what's in it, let's go ahead and choose the files. So if you can see on my screen, I'm going to go ahead and choose the files that I want to work with, Dirty Campaign Finance Data, and open that up. And you'll see OpenRefine has located it, and it's a column separated file, CSV. And just a few things on the interface. I just want to tell you, what's so great about OpenRefine is you not only can bring in, stuff that's located right on your own machine, you could bring in URLs. My students and I grabbed data from the city of Boston recently and cleaned that. Or you could get data from, somewhere else. Google data is an example. You could bring in a database, a SQL database. So it reads a lot of different types of data. And you can save a project and reopen it if you see where my cursor is here, or you could import a project that you already have. Okay, so if you've got your data identified right here, you're going to click Next, and it's going to load your data in. And let's just take a minute and look at the preview window. Um, it says that this is a comma separated file. We want to check this, that we want it to trim leading and trailing white space from all our text strings. That's just, text strings are just, the text that's in these columns. And sometimes there's an extra space which can mess you up. And it can store blank rows for us or store blank cells as nulls. So you can kind of get a preview of what your data is. All right, and then we go ahead and we're going to create a project right here on the upper right. And it's going to set our project up for us. Now, a few things before we go in and start cleaning. We're good. It recognized 2,045 rows, including our header row. OpenRefine defaults to 10 rows at a time or 10 records at a time. Let's change that to 50. Go ahead and change that to 50, just so you can see more of your data on the screen. And if you wanted to, you could go ahead and click over here on the right to the last entry, You could do that. You could go back. And it's also helpful because when we clean our data and we're all done, we can then export it to different file types. You know, the most common one would be Excel if we wanted to make a map or something. Okay, and another handy thing is if you make a mistake as you're cleaning, sorry about that alert, you can just click the undo button right here and go back to your last step. Okay, so we're pretty good with our data. Let's go ahead and do one thing that you can do in Refine. We can get rid of columns we don't need. So we don't need contributor type. We don't need it. So what you're going to do is click on the down arrow and you're going to go down to edit column and click on remove this column. Okay, you could just get rid of it. You don't need it. And if we just wanted to hide it, we could, let's go over to the date column, do the same thing, go to edit column, go to view, and you can collapse that column. All right, so it tightens it up and you can work with a much tighter screen here. So let's get rid of that. All right, so I want you to start by faceting. We're going to facet the contributor code. So I know this data because I've worked with it before, and you should know your data well. What does contributor code mean? In this case, it means this is the type of entity that gave to this particular politician. And so we want to see what that entity, how many there are. So we're going to go to our down arrow and we're going to go to facet, go to text facet, and it's going to bring over here on the left all the different information that's in our contributor code column. And now you can see how dirty it is because you can see that corporation is spelled 3 different ways. Individual is spelled 3 different ways, 4 different ways. So to clean that by faceting, you just go over to the edit button right here and just click on it. And I like to have all of my data in uppercase. It's just your preference, but I like to have my data in uppercase. So I'm telling the program I want to see all the corporations to look like capital CORP. So I type that in, hit apply. And I don't know if you noticed, but we had 15 choices before. We now have 14 choices. So repeat that with all of the corporation entries. Just repeat it so that they all look the same. And as I do it, as I move through and do it, I'm going to get less choices. My data is going to get cleaner. Okay, so now it's at 13 choices. Now it's going to come down to 12. I want you to go ahead and repeat this on individual. So here it's IND 1122 entries. Let's go ahead. That looks fine. Let's go ahead and clean this. Make all your individuals a capital IND. So we go from 12 choices to 11 choices. You can just cancel out of that. And then we'll go down to 10 choices. So this is what we're doing. We're cleaning. Okay, so practice doing that later. This is showing us the entities by name. When we're done cleaning and we want to get a lead for our story, we could just click on count. And we could write a lead that says, I didn't clean all my individuals, obviously, but we could get a lead that would show us, individual contributors were the most frequent entity that donated to the campaign of Dan Donovan last year. Newly analyzed data set shows, or something to that effect. Okay, and we also have blank rows. So as you clean, you shrink it up, you tighten it up, and it gets more uniform. And you can then do some analysis on it. All right, so that is faceting. Now, Another thing you can do is you can also change the way that your data looks. So for example, if you go back to corporation code and click on the down arrow and go to edit cells and then go to common transformations, you can see all the choices you have there. You can change this to uppercase, lowercase, you can change the format of the data. You can trim the leading and trailing white space or consecutive white space. We don't need to do that because we told the program to do that on the import. But there's other things you can do. You know, in the next session, when we do this training, we're going to learn how to split cells or join cells. All right. So that's one other way you can clean it. Now I want to show you how to cluster. That's really one of the most powerful things that you can do in Refine. And as you're cleaning, you're also getting to know your data. So it's useful that way. You're really doing some analysis. You know, we already learned some piece of factual information by doing a facet. Now I want you to do a cluster. So go over to column Corp 30. This is the name of the contributor. And I want you to go to the down arrow. Again, I want you to go to text facet. And you can see that it brings over here on the left the names of all the entities. And if we want to get rid of this window above our cluster, just click the little X here, and that will just get rid of it. And if you scroll through these entities, you can see there's a lot of entities that are the same seemingly, but spelled different ways. You're going to see that a little clearer when we cluster. So go ahead and click cluster. We have 539 different entities in our data, and we want to get that down. We want to clean that up. So when you click cluster, you're going to see that we have the same entity spelled different ways. So just a little bit of learning here about clustering. OpenRefine has two different ways to cluster, just two different kind of categories, the method and the keying function. And you really don't need to know a lot about this. You just need to know that you have to clean on both the two methods and the 6 keying functions. And these are algorithms that that group the data together in a certain way. So you start with key collision and fingerprint. Fingerprint is the default because it is the strictest algorithm and the one with the least number of false positives. It goes from the strictest, which is the default fingerprint, all the way down to the loosest, where you're going to get the most false positives. And if you scroll through this, you know, you'll see your data again, but you have the risk of more false positives. What I mean by this is you have to clean on all 6 and both methods. So let me show you what I mean by this. We have American Express here. We're going to tell OpenRefine how we want American Express to be listed in our data. Now, I like everything to be up in uppercase, so I'm going to leave American Express here, and I'm going to check the box because I want all of these to be merged into one name, American Express. If you go down to Tusk Strategies, again, this is my preference. I like everything to be in uppercase. I want all of these entities to appear as Tusk Strategies that way. Grassroots Initiative, I want it to appear this way, so I check that. Menashe Shapiro is likely a law firm. It's spelled, I don't even know why there's a difference here, but I don't really spot it, but maybe you guys do, but I want it to appear as Menashe Shapiro. Now, Donovan for DA, you can see the difference. There's a period between the D and the A, and there's 3 entries where there's no period. So I'm going to keep the period. I'm going to click that, and it's going to bring them together. Okay, and so you just go through Rubenstein Communications Inc. and Rubenstein Communications Inc. without a period. So I want a period on mine. Let's make sure. Yep, and that this one has a comma, this one does not. So if you click on that, so this is what you want right here on the right where my cursor is. So you just check all the boxes. And if you wanted to check everything, if you scroll through and everything looks good, you could just, click select all. But here we're going to merge and recluster. And notice we have 17 clusters here. When we merge and recluster, it's going to come down to 11. So we've cleaned our data up. So let's try to do this on the next keying function, which is the fingerprint, Ngram fingerprint. And these algorithms all mean that the data is grouped in a different way. Whatever the recipe is for how the algorithm works, they're grouped a different way. Metaphone, for example, is the software grouping things together that sound the same. And you do have to be very careful that you're not grouping together things that look the same but might be a different entity. Staten Island Chiropractic Associates is not the same as Staten Island Heart Imaging, but to the software, they sound the same, so they've grouped them together. I'm not going to group these together because I think they're different entities. Staten Island Terminal is not the same as Staten Island Heart. But down here with Richmond Savings Bank, I'm pretty confident these are the same. So I'm going to go ahead and cluster this one and leave it as Richmond County Savings Bank. You see, this second entry does not have bank. This third entry has bank, but it has an extra I on it. So I want to go ahead and have it look like Richmond County Savings Bank. And let's do one more. Timothy Carey, he's probably the same. I want to find somebody that isn't the same. Let's see if we go through New York Decorating Company, Inc. If there's anybody that isn't the same. It looks like most of them are. Yeah, so it looks like most of them are. So I think we're safe here. So Plumbing Contractors PAC, Political Action Committee for the Plumbers. I want my data to look like this, Plumbing Contractors PAC, not like Plumbing Contractors Political Action Committee. So I'm going to check that. If I were really doing this, I would be cleaning all of these. So then just merge selected and recluster. And we had additional clusters here. Now we only have 34. Okay, and when you're finished clustering and you can clean really, really quickly, then you can close out of here. And if you look on the upper left in my cluster window, we started with 539 choices. We're down to 528 choices. So when you're finished clustering, you can just click the X up here and your data will be cleaned up. Okay, here's the undo and redo button. And it shows you, which is another great thing about OpenRefine, it shows you what we did step by step. We removed a column. We edited something on contributor code. Okay. And then we worked here on column Corp 30. So if we wanted to get rid of something that we did or go backwards, you just click on the undo button, click on that, and it will take it away. All right. And then if you want to go back to the very beginning, you to start over, if you made a complete big mistake and you just want to start over, you click on this diamond over here on the upper left, and that will bring you back to your home screen. Okay, so let me see. I'm showing you where I opened the project. So I click on Open Project. It brings me back to my data. And if it were clean, I could then export it. If you see my cursor up here on the right. So I might want to export this as a CSV. And you can see here on my computer, it's now exported this as an Excel file or as a comma separated file. I'm going to open that up. And then I could do a visualization with it, or I could do some analysis. I could bring it into SQL or some other program, and work with it that way once it's clean. So that's a quick overview of cleaning. You should go ahead and practice, download some data from a government agency. They're getting better and better at cleaning data and standardizing it and putting it up in a way that we can work with, but there's still a lot of dirty data out there. And if you have questions, feel free to email me. I'll just put my email up on the screen here for you. And a few other resources. And Justin, I believe, is going to send you this information. These are a couple of tools you can use on OpenRefine. You can also clean in Excel. Google Sheets also has a great cleaning function now. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to email me. I work at Boston University. This is my email. And, I'm happy to help anybody who wants some help cleaning. And I hope you join us at our next session.
Thank you all for joining us for this 30-minute skills session. If you found this course helpful, please consider becoming a NEFAC sustaining member at nefac.org/join. We're providing this programming open to the public, free of charge, but we can only continue to do so with your support. So please make a contribution today or become a sustaining member at nefac.org/join. And we'll see you all next month for our next 30-minute skills course.